The most featured empire of the ancient world, the Assyrians crushed cities, deported entire nations, and ruled the Near East through terror. Across the lands between the Tigris and the Mediterranean, their armies advanced like a storm, leaving shattering kingdoms in their wake. But when the Assyrian war machine marched toward Egypt, something unexpected happened. The war stopped. Stopped by a pharaoh who did not come from the ancient cities of the Nile Delta, but from deep in Africa. His name was Taharqa, a king of Kush who for a brief and remarkable moment in history made the Assyrian Empire bleed. In the ancient world, the Nile was far more than a river. It was a living artery of civilization, flowing through deserts and kingdoms, carrying gold, armies, merchants, and ideas from the African interior to the shore of the Mediterranean. For thousands of years, Egypt had flourished along its banks. But far to the south, beyond the great cataracts of the river, another power was rising, the kingdom of Kush. Its sacred mountain stood at Jebel Barkal. Its kings ruled from the city of Napata, and its wealth flowed from the gold mines of Nubia. Over time, these southern rulers grew stronger, and eventually they looked north, toward Egypt itself. History would remember them by a striking name, the Black Pharaohs. Around 728 BC, the Kushite king Pi marched north from his capital near Napata. Egypt at the time was divided. Rival princes ruled separate cities along the Nile, each competing for power. One by one, Pi confronted them. One by one, they submitted. His victory brought Egypt under Kushite control and marked the beginning of the 25th dynasty of Egypt, sometimes known as the Nubian dynasty. After Pi's death, around 714 BC, the throne passed to his brother Shabaka and later to Shebitku. Then, in 690 BC, a new ruler ascended the throne at Memphis, a young king who would become one of the most powerful rulers of his age, Taharqa. He was likely born around 705 BC, making him probably in his late 20s or early 30s when he became pharaoh. He was the son of Pi, raised between two worlds, Nubian and Egyptian, two traditions, two cultures, one throne. But Taharqa did not present himself as a conqueror. Instead, he portrayed himself as something else entirely, a restorer, a guardian of Egypt's ancient order, the sacred balance known as Ma'at. Under Taharqa's rule, Egypt experienced a remarkable revival. He became one of the most ambitious builders the Nile had seen in centuries. At Karnak Temple, he constructed a monumental colonnade and raised massive statues dedicated to the god Amun. Far to the south, at cowering temples that had fallen into neglect during earlier periods of political chaos were restored. The land prospered. Gold from Nubian mines moved north along the Nile. Ivory, ebony, and incense traveled through ancient trade routes connecting Africa to the Mediterranean world. And when Taharqa's life finally came to an end, he would be buried in a pyramid at Nuri, constructed around 664 BC. It remains the largest royal pyramid ever built in Nubia, a testament to a powerful king. But while Taharqa rebuilt Egypt, another force was reshaping the ancient world. In Mesopotamia, the Neo-Assyrian Empire was expanding with relentless momentum. Its kings, Sennacherib, Esarhaddon, and Ashurbanipal, commanded the most advanced military machine the ancient world had yet seen. Their armies were disciplined, their weapons were forged from iron, their siege engines could break the walls of the strongest cities, and their rule was enforced with calculated brutality. Cities were destroyed, populations deported, empires absorbed. Soon the gaze of Assyria turned toward Egypt. Even before he became pharaoh, Taharqa had already entered this stage of international politics. In 701 BC, during Sennacherib's campaign against Judah, an unexpected figure appears in historical records. The Hebrew Bible refers to a Kushite ruler, Taharqa, king of Kush. This name refers to Taharqa. At the time, he was probably still a prince serving under the Kushite pharaoh Shabitku. Although historians debate the exact military role he played, the record reveals something important. Kushite forces were already intervening in the political struggles of the Levant. Taharqa's name was already known far beyond the Nile. In 674 BC, King Esarhaddon launched his first invasion of Egypt. The Assyrian army marched west toward the Nile, but this campaign did not go as planned. Assyrian records themselves acknowledged the failure. Somewhere in the eastern Nile delta, Taharqa's forces confronted the invaders, and the Assyrian army was forced to retreat. For one of the very few times in its long expansion, the Assyrian war machine had been checked. Egypt had resisted the greatest military power of its age. But Assyria did not accept defeat. In 671 BC, Esarhaddon launched a second invasion, far larger and more determined than the first. This time, the Assyrian army succeeded. The city of Memphis fell. Taharqa was forced to flee south to Nubia. Assyrian inscriptions proudly record that members of his royal family, including his wife and son, were captured and taken to Assyria. For a brief time, Egypt became an Assyrian-controlled territory governed through local vassal rulers. But Taharqa was not finished. In 669 BC, Esarhaddon died, and the moment the empire changed hands, Taharqa seized his opportunity. From Nubia, he marched north once more with a new army. He retook parts of Egypt and expelled several Assyrian-backed rulers. For a moment, the Kushite dynasty seemed ready to reclaim the Nile. But the new Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, responded quickly. In 667 BC, Assyrian armies returned. Once again, Taharqa was driven south into Nubia. He died around 664 BC in Kush. Yet the struggle did not end immediately. Taharqa's nephew, Tanutamun, made one final attempt to reclaim Egypt. For a brief moment, he succeeded. But in 663 BC, Ashurbanipal's army marched deep into Egypt and sacked the ancient city of Thebes, one of the greatest religious centers of the ancient world. The destruction shocked the Mediterranean world. The event was remembered even in the book of Nahum in the Bible. After this catastrophe, Kushite rule over Egypt effectively came to an end. Taharqa did not ultimately defeat Assyria, but he did something very few rulers ever managed. He resisted the Assyrian Empire. He defeated one of its invasions, and even after losing everything, he returned to fight again. After the earlier Kushite capital, Napata, the kingdom's center was moved to the south, to Meroe, which became a prosperous city connected with long-distance trade, iron production, and wealth. Later, the civilization Taharqa ruled continued for centuries. His monuments remain, his statues, his temples. In the desert at Nuri, the pyramid of Taharqa still rises above the sands. For more than 2,500 years, it has watched the Nile flow past, silent witness to the rise and fall of empires. The Assyrian kings are long gone. Their armies, their victories, their cities, all faded into history. But the memory of the African pharaoh who stood against them endures, a reminder that even the greatest empires were not unstoppable, and that sometimes, for a brief moment, the course of history is shaped by those who refuse to yield.